Congratulations.
We're going to try to talk to Jack Roush. Jack is finally up. You know, we tried for 2 years to get a car that Mark would like, you know, and he didn't much like the engines a good bit of the time either. I guess we hit on it today.
It has stage 2 rear suspension, which gives it all the benefits of the handling characteristics for going left and right on road courses. It's tuned up just a little, and we've reduced the back pressure slightly.
So today we're talking about Roush, a name that has a lot of history behind the person who owns it. Many of us know this name for its relation with the automotive world. As it turns out though, this is just a small fraction of the industrial world Roush represents today. With that said, today we're going to focus on its automotive side and its relation with Ford. We will also find out what else Roush is known for. Without further ado, I will let Lyle Sturgis continue from here. This is a man known for his passion for Mustangs and also has years of experience as a Roush SVT Manager.
Back in the early 2000s, Roush was putting out dealers throughout the United States. And they would go to a regular Ford dealer, and the Ford dealer would order several cars, and the car salesman would sell them. Now that worked fine in what they call the dealer network, but in many cases you would spend your money buying a Roush Mustang, and then if you ever had an issue, you would call back to your dealership, which was a Ford dealership, and you'd say, hey, I need to know something about my car. I need to speak to Joe. And they'd say, oh, Joe doesn't work here anymore. He works for Lexus now. And this went on throughout the United States because car salesmen, they change like underwear. So, you know, it's changed quite often. So I started this Roush program and became kind of Roush's go-to guy so that if you have issues, you can call me. I get calls from all over the United States. So working through Jack Roush and Jack Roush Jr. and through some racing, I got involved carrying the retail cars, and now I sell them all over the United States. When you see these cars go through certain things like Barrett Jacksons or Meekums or something on TV, I've sold a lot of TV people, a lot of different people these cars, and I sell them all over the United States. We ship them to them, and I make great friends. So Roush for years, really Roush is an engineering firm in Michigan. And if you ever Google Roush Corporation, you'll see that we're not only an engineering firm for all manufacturers, we're also a clean tech. If you've ever used a propane-powered ride, or we do that. If you've ever been to a Disney theme park and ridden a ride, that's part of Roush Entertainment. We do performance, we do racing, we do engines, it's a huge company. And so Roush is much more than these cars, because the Mustangs and the trucks are about, I would guess, 7% of 100% of what Roush Corporate does. The average customer that I have seems to be anywhere from 23 to 88. That's a huge span there. You've got people, I'm in my late 60s, you've got people my age and a little older who came up through the years of muscle cars and drag racing on the streets and all that. And then you have the younger generation that just wants the popular, cool car that's real fast and highly engineered. And we're all about American muscle. You know, a favorite saying at Roush is the difference between a street car and a road car is a Roush car. Or the difference between a street car and a race car is a Roush car. So, you know, we build very special, highly engineered vehicles. Everything at Roush is all about engineering. It's about the suspension, it's about the wheels, it's about the tires, it's about every part that goes on it. So that's what we're all about, the engineering. And Roush Engineering is tied in with Ford Motor Company. So these cars will have a 3-year 36 bumper-to-bumper warranty through Ford, through Roush, and through Ford Performance. So, you know, you've got a real neat piece here that is understood by Ford Motor Company. It's not like an aftermarket company, and you know, many people are doing this now. They'll get a Mustang, throw a bunch of parts on it and call it something, and that's not what we are. We're about the engineering. The Raptor, Ford Motor Company several years ago went away from the V8 engine. They went to the EcoBoost twin turbo V6. And so at Roush, we have the Roush Performance package, which actually gets you about 71 to 72 more horsepower. So they're running about 521, 522 horsepower, and they are more fun than a barrel of monkeys to drive. I'm telling you, they are sweet. They are really great trucks, torquey. The EcoBoost engine is a great torque engine, and then when we add our horsepower and torque to it at Roush, it takes it way beyond what a regular Raptor would be. And we've also done some EcoBoost turbocharged 4-cylinder Mustangs, which is called the RS1. And they have the best balance. They're so lighter at the front because they're half the engine. And so the weight ratio is almost 50-50, which makes a perfect car in the mountains or a track car or something like that. The engineering that we did on the Roush is how they got to what they're doing now on that 4-cylinder 2.3. I always tell people, you know, you have to look at the application of the car, what you're going to use it for. Ford's going more towards the EcoBoost engines. Hopefully they'll stay with V8s because you have people of my generation that are big V8 fans. And you know, like the sign of the commercial says, there's nothing like a V8. So, and talking to me, it's really about a V8. When we get a Mustang or a truck from Ford in Michigan, all these are built in Plymouth, Michigan. So these vehicles the Mustangs come from the Flat Rock plant, and the trucks come from the truck plant there. And they're put on a train and they're shipped to Roush Performance. And where we take the suspension off, and let's use the Mustang for instance, we take that suspension off, we put the single coil-over 3-way adjustable racing suspension, or the 3-way coil-over 3-way adjustable racing suspension on our Mustangs. This is actual real race suspension where if you want to change and adjust it, you take the tire off and use the spano wrenches and do it. It's not one of these, I call it the fluff suspension where, oh, I flipped this little button and now all of a sudden I'm a hot rodder. Now these are real true racing suspensions. And people would think that would ride rough, but it actually rides much better than the natural suspension in a Mustang or an F-150. Now we did team up with Fox suspensions on our trucks, and when we worked with Ford on the Raptor, we used Fox suspension on the regular Ford Raptor, and we found that we could upgrade the suspension a little bit and also make the wheels and tires better. And Weld Wheel Corporation jumped in with us on the wheels to make a lighter weight, stronger wheel, and then also we upgraded the Fox suspension a little bit along with our horsepower upgrade, and that became a pretty bad Raptor. And then our Mustangs, of course, are all about suspension and handling. These cars will go 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds and have a 1.07 lateral G on the skid pad. They are a handling machine. So we're fortunate here in the Carolinas to have the Blue Ridge Parkway. A lot of times I'll take my customers up there. Man, they'll quit before the car will because it will handle and there's no body roll. It sticks, and that's what Roush suspension and everything that we put in these Roush Mustangs is all about. We use the Magneride now in our 19s, some of our 20s, and we reprogram the Magneride for what our application is. But the best suspension going is this coil-over suspension. No, nothing has to be done to the steering wheel, because everything we set up, we design for the package that Ford sends us. And so we want to bring the best of what Ford has, because we do bring warranty with this too. You sure can. You don't have a break-in period like the old days. These cars are set up and you can go to the track. Now, in 2020, we're introducing the Jack Roush Edition Mustang, which I had on the showroom floor earlier today. It'll be back later. That car, they're only building 60 of, but they have larger intercoolers, larger rear end coolers, larger transmission coolers, everything just for racing. But I have taken mine, I have a yellow car that I run, and it doesn't overheat. It's a fast, great car. You can take these cars here, leave here, go to Kershaw, South Carolina, to Carolina Motorsports Park or to VIR, get some track time, go out and have the time of your life. Or you can drive it to church on Sunday. You don't have to race it, you know. The new Coyote Gen 3 engine has forged internals, and then we put the TVS 2650 supercharger on it. And I got to tell you, when you do that, you've got a perfect marriage in Ford's world. And we designed that for Ford. That is the same supercharger that would go on any Ford product. And even on the supercharger says Ford Performance Roush Engineering. Well, it's really unique because on our 18s and year models, we did a Ford Racing half shaft axle, which helped quite a bit. And then we found by working with Ford that with the axle and everything that's set up, that transmission is handling it perfect. Now you can read, everybody gets on and has an opinion. And I'm sure there's some people somewhere in the world could have had a bad time or a good time because Jesus didn't build these cars. Some guy did. But I have had very little transmission issues, if any, here. And I sell them all over the United States. Shifters. Some people prefer to have a different brand shifter. Most people use the Roush shifter because that's a good shifter. But you'll have people that are just anal about, I've got to have a Barton, or I've got to have an MGW, I've got to have, you know. And if it helps them drive better and gets it to them, that's great. But the transmission itself handles this power and performance well. And if it didn't, we wouldn't be able to warranty it like we do. Mustang, gosh, the Mustang brand has so many aftermarket parts from so many companies. At Roush, we really, you know, we started back in the 90s, and then in 05 is when the Mustang went, phew, you know, 03, 04 was pretty doggone good too. But now when people want to put a supercharger on an older Mustang, we can do that here at Tyndall Roush Performance. If they buy anything that they can buy through Roush, we can do. You cannot make a Mustang into a Roush. You either have a Roush or you have a Mustang with a bunch of Roush parts on it. You don't have, they're not the same thing. Because at Roush, they're engineered, built, and serialized and numbered. It's a true Roush vehicle versus buying a Mustang and putting a bunch of parts on it. There are dealers all over the country trying to run out here and sell a cheap supercharged car. The problem is, if you start cutting corners with performance, then something's going to be weak and something's going to break. And I'm sure they've been successful at whatever they try to do. But like I said, if you want performance, you want engineering, you want warranty, you want all these things, Roush is what you go with. We used to do the Focus brand, but now that Ford's not building the Focus anymore, we've gotten away from that. It was mostly cosmetic with a cold air intake and a tune. But Jack Jr. has an all-wheel drive Ford Focus. I'm going to tell you, that's one bad machine, but he set it up for racing. It was their prototype, so when your name's Jack Roush Jr., I guess you can do about anything you want. And he's one heck of a driver, I'm gonna tell you. So, you know, we thought we might get into that, but Mustang was the king, and then the trucks have taken off like gangbusters. So we've kind of, since Ford's gearing away from cars, except for the Mustang and the F-150, then that's where we are. You can put a bunch of power, and that's where people mess up on these Mustangs. Oh, I put a supercharger. I've got 800 horsepower, but they can't do anything with it, and they sure can't handle with it.
As you can see, Roush not only makes Mustangs fast, it also serves many other industries, like aerospace, military, oil and gas, alternative fuels, and so on, which I didn't know about. But let's talk about Roush Mustangs for now. The one I drove was a manual transmission 2019 Roush Stage 3 package with optional 3-way adjustable height coilover suspension, upgraded 20-inch wheels, and leather seats with Roush stitching. Yeah, I had no idea what package I will be driving until I got to the Tyndall Roush dealership, so I had a surprise for myself. So with that said, I drove it for a few miles, which included some city driving, highway driving, and a road with a few tight corners. And as a result, first thing I noticed was the suspension. I would take this car for this reason alone. At some point I felt how the suspension and the tire was fighting to keep the rear end in place. And that felt good. It really sticks to the ground, as Lyle says. The acceleration is rather interesting. Call me inexperienced, but I didn't feel like there were 250 horsepower more over the stock Mustang GT. It definitely felt more powerful, but not by a huge margin. With that said, I'm sure the Roush Stage 3 Mustang is faster. It just doesn't feel that fast. What else? It felt heavy. I mean, it's a heavy car anyway, but my problem with that is that today's Mustang is not that much of a muscle car anymore. It's more of a sports car. And I'm sure this generation Mustang can be made relatively light, nimble, and responsive. Maybe I'll change my mind when I drive it again for a longer time. After all, I had this Mustang on the road for maybe 30 minutes. So I wasn't even nearly close to what this car might be capable of. So now the price. The one I drove with options was a little under $80,000, which is a lot of money. And there's a good competition out there, both in terms of performance and pleasure from driving. And yet it seems like there are enough people out there willing to pay such a price for a Mustang and really appreciate the history and the heritage behind it. And that's fine. There's so many versions of Mustangs out there today that you can easily find the one that fits your needs best, and you're gonna be happy with it. So that was my take on Roush Performance. Again, this was not a video dedicated to a specific vehicle. Instead, it was meant to show details some people never knew about Roush, including myself. I want to say huge thanks to Lyle Sturgis for introducing me to the Roush world. And also huge thanks to Tyndall Roush Performance dealership, who was awarded many times as the best and the largest Roush dealership in the world. Yes, it turns out Roush is selling parts for Mustangs all over the world. I will include all the links in the description below. Hope you found today's video helpful, and I'll see you next time.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girando, delle belle turbando al riposo, ma ci situato giro d'amor. Delle belle turbando al riposo, ma ci situato giro d'amor.